let's start with the neutral game. So, um, because Zangief has so much health, and because he's a grappler, like you mentioned, it's all about space control and getting the other guy to the corner. But if you're able to control the ground effectively, then most players, especially in the rookie bronze and silver ranks, will try to jump in like pretty soon after you've limited their options on the ground.
Yeah.
So, um, your ability to anti-air effectively um, will kind of determine the amount of intimidation that you can, instill on the opponent. So, what would you say would be Zangief's main anti-air or anti-airs?
It's kind of a toss up between his standing jab and his lariat,
Hmm.
I'd say,
Okay.
at least with season two.
Ah, what was it in season one?
I think it was just standing jab in season one, but they
Hmm.
buffed lariat, I think, a little bit.
Hmm.
Even though it comes out later, I think they give it more invuln, and the hitbox is like way bigger.
Ah,
And I found it's like a little more useful nowadays.
nice.
Like I've been getting most people with it rather than the jab, which is kind of weird because the math doesn't add up because the startup is slower. But I think the invincibility frames are helping.
Hmm. Okay. Uh, all right, cool. So basically, have you used the? Oh, okay. So every time we're in training mode, you want to make sure that you have attack data and key display on,
Yeah.
and then go over to dummy settings, and
Mhm.
then have you used set status to playback recording? Have you used this before?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So um, essentially, what we're going to do is try to simulate the Ryu neutral game so that um, so that because like it's all fine and good to like set the dummy to just jump in at you over and over and then you practice your anti-airs, but like
Yeah.
that doesn't that's good to for like the exploratory phase, let's say, to like just
Yeah.
figure out what works, but then actually but that's not actually like really good practice because it doesn't simulate a real match.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is first, we're going to start with the jump in, and then we're going to record a couple of different action slots to try to like simulate it. Because essentially, once you learn how to do this with Ryu or against Ryu, you can kind of like apply it to other characters that you might be struggling with as well.
Mhm.
Okay, so we're going to go to recording slot one, and then we're just going to set them to jump in heavy kick, and then pause, and then go to action playback settings, and then turn slot one on. And now he should basically just jump in over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So essentially now we want to think about like what are the ranges where jab will work, and also if there are any, you know, I would also say that maybe there's also like crouching heavy punch as well,
Yeah.
um, even though maybe that's not as common. But essentially, we want to kind of like we want to basically have a good idea for which anti-air we should do at any given moment, because like what would you say the differences are between stand jab, anti-air, and lariat?
Well, if first of all, if you miss stand jab, then you're way safer
Hmm.
than lariat because lariat is super unsafe if you miss.
Hmm.
And then also, I guess this is kind of better or worse for Zangief. If you hit lariat wrong, I mean, with the changed hitbox, it might be different. But if you hit lariat super late, it'll toss them to the opposite side,
Mm.
and they're out of the corner.
Hmm.
But jab, if you hit it, it seems to almost always toss them into the corner. or back forward anyway, back
Hmm.
to where they were.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Good. Yes. I would also say that when we compare the damage, Lariat does 120 and 200 stun, whereas Stand Jab just does 40 and 70 stun. But the other main difference between using one or the other, in addition to what you mentioned with the side switch, with the accidental side switch, is that stand jab will essentially just reset them, and then they're within range for you to just SPD again or see what they do. Um,
Yeah.
so whereas if you were to do lariat, um, even though you knock them down, uh, like it, it may not be. I don't know. There are some instances where like it's better to just like go for the reset as opposed to just going for the damage. Like at the beginning of the round, I would say, it might be better to just stand jab because then you can kind of just wait and then do like a late tech, like so you just kind of like walk up and then wait a split second and then throw. So if they
Mhm.
were to, because like in this situation, right, like an inexperienced player is gonna be like, oh shit, Zangief is right next to me, let me just uppercut.
Yeah.
And if they do, then okay, like this guy sucks, but
Yeah.
uh, you can kind of like build this into like part of your game plan. So let me open up a new. I've been using this app called Evernote as a way to like keep track of student notes and stuff, but recently I've been using this other app called MindMeister, which is a mind mapping tool.
Oh
And
wow.
so I'm just going to make a new mind map for Zangief, and then I'll send this to you at
Okay.
the end. Okay, so and then let me screen share with you. Okay, there we go. All right, so
Oh,
we're
that's
just gonna
cool.
do like anti-air stand jab, lariat, and then crouching heavy punch. So, part like the reason why I kind of switched to using MindMeister for myself as opposed to just simply Evernote is because as you learn more about the game, you can kind of fill this out more so that like you're so that you kind of always have like a living, breathing document for like kind of like how to play the character or how to play the game, let's say. So for example, let me show you my Akuma one, which I'll send you to if you want, but it's like, um, and keep in mind, like I don't really
Well,
like I'm not like I've been playing him since the game came out, but I wasn't an Akuma player before. But
yeah.
like as you can see, like here, let me kind of like zoom in so you can kind of get a better idea. So essentially, I have like a
Mhm.
situations section, a frame traps section, a combo section that's separated by like crush counter and like corner and then after dizzy and stuff. So
Yeah.
like all of these, I mean, it's kind of just like a flow
That's what.
chart. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can kind of do the same a little bit for Zangief. Uh, so let's say, um, okay, so that does 48 and 84 damage, and then Lariat did 120 and then 200 stun, and then I think Down Fierce did 120 and 180. 120 and 180 stun. So, and I would also say, so then we can kind of take it like one further, which is that we can add like another attribute to it, like reset in front, knockdown, and then reset in front as well. So essentially, we're kind of like trying to categorize everything. So you might even say, all right, well, um, and this is the first time that I've done this reset in front situation, but like you get the idea.
Yeah.
Uh, so now you might say, all right, well, once we have this done, then we can say, all right, well, what do we do after the reset in front? So we can wait to see we can like wait a split second to see what they do. Um, and then we could also just let's say SPD,
Yeah.
or we could do like maybe we could do low jab, and one of these options. And then we could say, let's say, uh, hold on, let me restart this. Okay, so now the SPD does 180 and 250, and I just did light SPD, but whatever. So essentially, like from if you were to use crouching heavy to anti-air, instead of just getting the 120 damage, you from lariat, you can get the 120 damage and a reset, and then if they didn't do anything, uh, then you would get another 180. So let's say 300 damage total
Yeah.
from that one situation. And
And I
sorry, go
actually
ahead.
just checked heavy SPD to see if it actually was in range,
Uh-huh.
and it actually works. So that's an extra 220.
Yeah. So, well, the other
Yeah.
thing is that like I don't know, the timing might be a little bit different, but yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, you get the idea. So, um, so like the reason why we do this is to kind of solidify our strategy, I guess, so that we have like a very clear idea of what we're going to do and why. Even if it doesn't work out, like for example, we went for the reset and then, we made a bad read and the guy just uppercutted. That's fine because we know, okay, well, he uppercutted that time, so maybe he's that type of player.
Yeah.
So it's okay if like our decision making doesn't work out because we made a bad read, as long as we had like a legitimate reason for why we did something.
Mm.
Um, so, all right. So where were we? We were going. Okay. So first we had to like figure out what our anti-airs were, and then we've tried to figure out, okay, well, what do we do afterwards? So that's all fine and good. But then, Ryu's not always gonna jump. So we're going to record another another recording slot, and we can just kind of back him up a little bit and then record again. And what we can do, I guess we could say that this can be our like our fireball recording slot. So you could just do like heavy fireball and then uh, actually heavy fireball and then block high and then pause. And so now we can turn recording slot 1 on and then recording slot 2. Sorry, turn slot 1 off and turn slot 2 on. So
Yeah.
now he's just gonna fireball over and over and over. Okay. So now that we have that, then we can add kind of like a different section to the mind map, which would be like neutral game. So um, okay. Okay, so what are Zangief's options against Fireball?
Um, Lariat to pass through.
Hmm.
Headbutt to pass through essentially. Um, V trigger also passes through technically.
Hmm.
And then jumping over and blocking.
Right.
I think that's it. He doesn't have green hand.
Yeah. block, let's say jump, and then we have neutral or jump forward.
Mm.
And then there's also V skill.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Flex.
So um, each of these has like the like kind of like pros and cons. So um, and it also kind of depends on like how far you are and whether it's like first round or early or mid or late game or whatever. But you have to be well versed in each of the options so that you so that you're kind of building towards like a clear path, let's say. So um, we could probably break it down into like early game and then or mid or late game. So we could say, all right, well, we know for sure V trigger is not going to be in the early game,
Yeah.
and uh, and maybe we don't even want to use V skill in the late game because we're just kind of incurring extra risk.
Mm.
So we can kind of just kind of sort these, and then we could also probably put headbutt in late game as well. Um, and we could probably put lariat in the late game. And blocking is always going to be an option.
Yeah.
Um, so in the early game, which is what we're most concerned with right now, um, you know, you're going to have to think about like what the game plan is, right? So against a character that's got fireballs, you want to make sure that you build up V trigger.
Yeah.
And so what we can do is try to see. All right, so I haven't played Zangief at all in season 2. So I'm gonna just reset V gauge to normal and then restart. And oh, and then the other thing that we should do is set one player health to normal. That way, uh, we don't. Um, That way it's not just regenerating like super fast. So this actually kind of simulates like how much life
Oh.
you would be losing in a real match, as well as like how long it's going to take for this life to regenerate. So what this should tell you is that you really don't want to be doing more than like one or maybe two max. But if you do flex two fireballs, now you have half a bar. And at this point, if you just walk forward and neutral jump, you can regain all that health as well as gain the corner position.
Mm.
So I would argue that in terms of priority or things that you could do, um, I would say that in uh, I would say that V skill would probably be the one to start with because you need to build V trigger anyways. And the other thing I've been doing is adding like a little red icon to indicate that something is building V skill or V
Oh
gauge.
yeah.
And your lariat and headbutt, let's say, would build a little bit of meter instead.
And would blocking build V skill? V
So
gauge.
that's a great question. So as you can see, when you're walking forward and blocking, it builds a tiny amount of
I,
V gauge, but um, nowhere near as much. It seems like,
well,
yeah, like okay, so you can block 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so like six. It
yeah.
looks like six. Okay, like
6
six
gives you.
blocked fireballs equals one V skill. Um, so that also kind of builds like a tiny
Um,
amount as well.
yes.
And then we could say, all right, well, what about headbutt? So headbutt doesn't do anything. So we're not going to
Uh,
take any damage.
It actually builds meter in season 2 now, which is super
Oh,
nice.
really? Oh, shit.
Yeah, that was they
Oh,
buffed.
that's so good.
Yeah, right. It's super nice because before he got nothing, and it was kind of a big risk because you have to basically guess when they're throwing.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it's a buff for sure. It's nice.
Okay, so I would then say that uh hmm, interesting. Okay, I didn't know that. So essentially we can kind of go down like two different paths. One would be focusing on building V skill, and the other would be focusing on building uh your critical gauge. Or I guess you could also say that, oh, look at that. The
Yeah,
headbutt
it's quite a bit.
continues. Yeah, so like when you have the gray life and you absorb fireballs with the headbutt, it doesn't stop your gray life from regenerating, as opposed to like um,
Oh, block.
if you were to block. See,
Yeah,
like if you block, like you're not going to regenerate any gray life. But if you headbutt, then you can still walk forward, and that doesn't interfere with regenerating the gray life. Because even though Zangief has a lot of health to work with, I mean, you don't want to necessarily like waste any of that advantage.
yeah,
Um, so I would
and
say, yeah,
both of those kind of prevent pushback too, which I think is
yeah, that's crazy. That's quite the buff. Okay, so we can kind of, let's say, all right, we can even add like a little. We can even add numbers. We can say first we want a V skill, then we want a headbutt, and then um, maybe we after that, then we want to jump or block or whatever. So essentially, we have to, uh, we're trying to figure out how to advance forward while also protecting from the air. So then we can go back and then turn on slot one. So now we don't know if he's going to jump or if he's going to throw the fireball. So, oop, oh there we go. All right, there we go. Back to the plan. So um, I'm just trying to anti-air with down fierce and then wait a moment SPD when he lands. Or if he if he throws a fireball, then I want to flex. Oh, see, so as you can see, like depending on how prepared you are, will determine whether or not you're able to hit the down fierce. Because if you're kind of far away, then you'll see it coming or you'll trade. But the other thing about being this far away is that they may not jump. But if you're this
yeah,
far away, then you can basically safely flex without having to worry. And you would also be far enough away to headbutt. So by doing this for just kind of like a few minutes, and then remember that we set our health to normal, you can kind of just simulate a real match by just trying to push him to the corner and then follow the game plan. And over time, you'll get better at it. And oops, there we go. So his health regenerates, but yours doesn't. And then you can kind of uh, oops, follow the plan. And yeah, even if you parry the jump in, it's still not too bad. Um,
yeah,
so this is pretty good for like two slots. But now, what if you're playing like a stronger opponent? Then we're gonna record a third slot, and the third slot is just gonna be walking back and forth. And the reason, and maybe you might walk back and forth for a little bit, and then like, throw like a couple of light attacks, But essentially, we want to have like three different slots, and now this kind of better simulates what a real opponent, might fight like, because we don't really know when he's gonna jump. Oop.
Yeah.
So this and I guess we haven't even talked about like you know buttons to use in the neutral game. So I guess that would be like the next step, right? Because first we have to figure out how we're going to deal with the fireball, and then we're going to have to figure out, okay, well, what buttons are we actually going to press to like move forward? And this would be like, I guess the next level of improving the neutral game, which is what buttons does Zangief have either in general or specifically against Ryu? Because like some
Mm.
characters have like I don't know, some characters just have like good buttons that tend to beat like other characters' buttons.
Yeah.
So what do you think would be Zangief's some of Zangief's like maybe like his three most useful moves in neutral game?
The best is probably crouching jab because that move is ridiculous.
Hmm.
Um, it reaches so far.
Hmm.
And then I'd say either crouching medium punch or standing medium punch are pretty good. Um,
Why is crouching medium punch good?
it uh, theoretically, if you were in V trigger, you could cancel. I think actually all of his normals can cancel, but yeah, I think standing is probably better.
Okay, so
Um,
how would we kind of objectively determine which might be better? Because like we don't like we want to leave as little to our opinions as possible, right? We want to have like a strategy based on like facts and figures and data.
yeah.
So what do you think would be like um, um, what are some objective ways to determine like whether like standing medium punch or crouching medium punch might be better in neutral?
Probably damage and combo potential.
Okay. Yes, that is true. I would also say that looking at the frame data would also be helpful because then we can know for certain like which move is like better because better moves. I mean, there's no better, but it's like, oh well, these moves do the same amount. Like one move does like five more damage, but it's like +1 instead of -2. That might make a
Yeah,
move better. So are you familiar with how to read frame data?
little bit. Like I've gone over some of your videos about it, and it's still with the Oki calculator here. It still gives me a little bit of trouble because
Okay.
it's
Where did I lose you? Because this is something that I'm like really trying to improve on myself is how to better explain frame data.
um I think it was mostly like on wake up stuff. Like I kind of got like frame trap kind of mixed up, but the basics of it of like startup, active, and recovery,
Hmm.
I get pretty much
Okay.
down.
Okay,
So
cool. All right, so then let's look at the two moves that we were talking about, which is um, standing medium punch versus crouching medium punch. So standing medium punch and crouching medium punch both have, and actually I don't know if this is season. Oh, okay, it is season two, I think. All right, I'm just gonna assume this is season two. All right, so crouching medium punch, standing medium punch, um, both have 6 frame startup. Crouching medium punch is active for 1 extra frame. The hit advantage is 4 for standing medium punch and 5 for crouching medium punch. And crouching medium punch is +3 on block versus +2 on block. So that might tell us
mm,
that this might tell us that Um, I mean, essentially, it doesn't tell us anything because we're kind of back in the same spot because neither one of them seems noticeably significantly better. Like, okay, so this one
Yeah.
does 10 less damage. Hmm. I don't know. Like now, I'm also kind of curious as to what the hitboxes look like
Oh,
because if you look at is this the one? Let's see. Jump, difference, UC change. Oh, here it is. Hitbox. All right, so we could just go to Zangief Season 2, and
oh,
then let's see.